We're live. We have no viewers, but that's okay because y'all will come in on in soon and see what we do. It's Anoa and Brandon. We do this thing. We do late shows. I don't know why I do late shows because I got narcolepsy like a motherfucker. I go to sleep like an old person at 9 o'clock. How are you doing, Brandon?
I'm alive. I'm awake.
You're alive. Do you have health care?
Well, I won't in a few weeks. I turned 26.
It's not funny at all. I'm sorry. Wait, so do you lose it at age 26 or does it cover you through age 26?
Again, that's something that I should probably know, but I will put it to you this way. Obamacare was not very well marketed. Like these things, like it, and part of this conversation I was having when I was watching it to myself, I was like, why is Bernie Sanders out here advocating for Obamacare and the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act? It's just like, why isn't it Chuck Schumer? Why isn't it Obama? Why isn't it the people who, hamstrung this law from the beginning by getting rid of the public option, by getting rid of provisions to negotiate for drug prices that got, the people who didn't put the caps in on premiums or on lifetime spending. Like, why aren't these people being forced out to come in and justify those positions? And the answer is because they know Bernie Sanders is likable and he can sort of put together a good argument. But his argument was we need to do single payer, right? That's the crux of his argument. Obamacare is better than nothing, but we really need to move towards single payer. That's what's his entire thing over the course of the night. Hey, Obamacare.
I love how he worked that in. He's like, so tell me, Ted, you're going to work for me on Medicare for all, right? Well, Ted, Medicare for all is better. Well, Ted, Medicare for all. Public option, Medicare for all.
Ted Cruz is so visually unappealing, and he comes at. He looks slimy, and I hate to make fun of someone's looks, but Ted Cruz looks so slimy, and he's such. I don't know. Alan Dershowitz, of course, came out and said Ted Cruz was the best debater amongst Republicans, but actually listening.
That's awful if that's the case.
Yeah. Actually listening to him debate or construct an argument, it's just full of these logical fallacies. It's just like you keep giving me individual examples of people in countries where they have universal health care being unable to receive health care, a child here, an old person there. It's like, that's fine, but without any actual data, you're just giving me anomalous examples of things that have occurred. That's not a trend. It doesn't say anything about their health care. Right. It's like, hey, some people will always fall through the cracks. But what I'm talking about is the millions of people who fall between, poverty extreme poverty and not so extreme, but still pretty bad poverty, who are uninsured because a lot of states have not expanded Medicaid because that wasn't required of states like Texas, where
Georgia,
Ted Cruz, where Ted Cruz in 2013 said, and I don't know the quote verbatim, but in 2013, Ted Cruz said something along the lines of expanding Medicaid would do irreparable damage to our population. Like, what? It's like
it was. No, go ahead. Finish. I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll jump in there.
Ted Cruz listening to Ted Cruz debate this. His arguments are constructed in a way that is so disingenuous, and they almost sound like they make sense. He always starts with a personal story about somebody, or I agree with you, Bernie Sanders. The government is subject to a lot of pressures from corporations, and corporations are bad. Kind of. He always starts with that sort of corporations are bad, or I agree with you, or here's a story about a dying child. And then he somehow transitions that into we need to abolish the IRS. It's like, what? it's like how did you get there? I don't understand how we got from, corporations have too much say. The pharmaceutical corporations have too much say in Congress. The insurance companies have too much say in Congress. That's why we need to get rid of the IRS. But it's a bait and switch, and it's the classic Republican bait and switch. We're going to strip some of the powers away from the government so that it's weak and ineffective. And then when people say, hey, the government is weak and ineffective, we'll say, well, that's because, the public sector is inherently flawed. It doesn't do what we've done to it. It doesn't do with the deregulation. It doesn't do with neoliberal politics. That's just the way the public sector is. So that's why we should take more power away from them. And it's honestly, I hate to say, it's more Nancy Pelosi, right? The solution to the trappings of capitalism, the solutions to the problems that capitalism and neoliberal capitalism and Reaganism is simply more of it. We just do more of it because we haven't done enough.
Right. So one of the things that caught me, just to back up for a little bit to respond to what you're saying, was when he was talking about all these different things that America does more than other countries. And one of the things he lists, MRIs, he's going down his list, C-sections. Pause. More C-sections in the United States is not a good thing. It's not a sign that we're doing medicine better here, that the rate of C-sections is higher than it is in other countries. It's actually a problem. The rush to do C-sections. I mean, really the rush for doctors and others because they can bill it, right? For more expensive. There's just so many things that's so wrong. I mean, but that there are issues in terms of maternal health and prenatal issues that
infant
exist.
Infant
mortality, or some of these that go into like having a higher rate of a C-section is not a good thing at all. Actually, I remember when we were looking for hospitals, when we were having Max and Nayla, we were looking to see who had lower rates of C-sections when we were choosing doctors and hospitals. Like that was one of the indicators that we were taught to look for in terms of a good, provider, a good place to be overall. Like that just struck me. I'm just like, who the hell is advising this man? Like, what does he know about? I did one of my high points. Just that, there were some little funnies in there. Ted Cruz the idea that Ted Cruz is the best debater they have for the Republicans. It's very scary because he sucks, right? He's really not that good of a debater. But here's the thing: most of them probably really aren't good at debate, even though he's a lawyer. He probably did what I don't know his resume off the top of my head. I know he was the Supreme Court clerk, but he probably did law review, didn't do like moot court or anything like that. Wasn't a very good or that's why I don't like Obama, because Obama's so good with talking, right? He talks so well and so smooth, and he's not clumsy like
blah, 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 blah.
Right. But like Mike Pence, I would say, even though Pence is scary, but Pence is actually probably their best debater. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected, he sounds rational and normal. He actually sounds like a really nice person who would be the dad up the block, except for the fact that he talks like really crazy stuff. Because I just think about Mike Pence back during the debate with Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine is all Democrats, so we gotta win. And Mike Pence is like, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, well, how we do things over here in these parts. And he had such great word placement. And what he said, he sounded good. Ted Cruz not only sounds crazy, and it's so funny that one of the hashtags that I saw tonight when I was tweeting earlier was the Zodiac killer, because everyone says Ted Cruz is like really the Zodiac killer or whatever. But he does come off like really like scary and like unstable. And he's trying to empathize with people, like when he was trying to empathize with the woman who had breast cancer. It's like, you blubbering idiot, just be quiet, listen to her question and answer her. And I think they had to prompt him to answer her, right? Like he didn't actually even answer her. He was all over the place.
Right? Like, it's not that he's a good debater. He's good at constructing arguments that sound like they make sense. And so if you are already in that frame, he'll put together an argument that sounds like it make framework. But if you're not within that framework, he sounds crazy, because the things that you're saying, they simply don't make any sense. Like, how do you get from the government, like, because they take too much money from corporations and is corrupt, to, well, hey, that's EPA, man, because like, what? You believe the EPA should be abolished, then yes, that makes sense. But if you're outside, it's like what are you talking about? And so that was his whole thing. Whenever someone came to him with empathy, right? And I don't like to joke about people being a sociopath, but he ever someone asked him a question, especially the women, I think really all women who ask questions, like he always had some story about how he can relate to them. Right. Bernie didn't do that. Bernie didn't have to do that. Ted Cruz, like, oh, what are you having? A girl? Like, I have 2 girls at home. Like, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have breast cancer. My mother has breast cancer. What a coincidence. It's just like, you don't have to do that if you're not, you know, pretending to have empathy. Hey, that's all it is. And about him that's unappealing. I will say that I had a few, there were some great moments in that debate, though, and they mostly came from Bernie. One of them,
Bernie was
CNN loves touting bringing out the small business. That's their favorite archetype for these. Like, I'm a small business owner. I own 5 of these franchises, you know, and I have 49 employees, and I'm holding off on buying, you know, having a 50th one because then I'd have to provide them with health insurance. And he's just like, well, if your margin for profit is so razor thin that you can't afford to give your people, you know, a living wage or health insurance, maybe you shouldn't have opened the 5th store. It's like, have you ever thought of that? Like, you know, like if your business, and this is that whole mentality with these quote unquote small business owners, like, the government is making me pay $15 minimum wage, they're making me pay, you know, to provide healthcare, contraception, all these things, and I just can't afford it. And no one ever stops to think, well, hey, you know what? If you can't afford these things, then your business is not viable. Like, if you can't afford to pay, if you can't afford to pay a living wage or afford to meet this minimum criteria, then your business is simply not viable. And maybe you should think about that before instead of going for raw growth of business. You know, how many franchises can you own? How about quality of life for your staff? That's another viable path to go down.
Absolutely. So again, for guys who are just tuning in, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I know you've already been up late. We had the early show with Ben, then we had the debate with Bernie and the Zodiac killer, and now you have me and Brandon here with you for a little bit to talk about the high points. Shout out I told folks since we don't have phones right now, because I'm already running the stream. I'm not going to be able to run Skype in the stream and talk to you all tonight as well. But definitely hit us up on Twitter. Let us know your comments or hit us up in the chat room. We're in the chat room as well with you guys tonight. But CK for Progress on Twitter said, you know, as a small business owner and wife of cancer survivor, Medicare for all would be a dream. I mean, I think that I like what he kept doing about tying it back into Medicare for all. He's like, absolutely right. The insurance premiums are ridiculous. It's out of control. The insurance companies are doing this. We need Medicare for all. I liked how Bernie, and I've said this, and I really do feel like some of his shortcomings in terms of like the way he was during debates with Secretary Clinton was more so of not wanting to be called sexist. I really think there was a lot of fear of how her team and constituency or followers would paint him. And he really didn't go like full on with her, right? Because he didn't really go like super hard ham here either. But I really do think that he did a really good job. But this is also a topic that he's very comfortable with, right? So he's able to take the points that every time, like I'm looking at Ted Cruz and he keeps talking about insurance is too expensive and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. And Bernie was able to tie that back in. Like, you're absolutely right. Insurance companies are able to do this. He's like, well, there's no competition. He was like, well, no. And he's like, you're right. There is paperwork, but because insurance companies. So I really liked how Bernie put the burden back on, you know, the various actors we have in the system. Now, when we're talking about in terms of small business owners, like, I think people get it twisted. And it's like, oh, well, you're not being considered a small business owners. But on the flip side, he had a very good point to her, too, about the profit margin, about whether or not she's being competitive or undercutting, you know, a competitor by not paying wages or benefits that someone else might be paying. That was a really interesting conversation that he started. But here's the thing someone tweeted to me earlier before I took my nap, because I'm... Yo, when you hit 35 and it's like, really, you're in your 60s, you need naps and stuff like that. Like, I turned 30 and my shoulder had went out. Like, it's just I'm falling apart the older I get. Glad I have health insurance, and I believe that everyone should have health insurance and access like my family does. Ted Cruz, people need to ask Ted Cruz about his health insurance and his plan that we, the taxpayers, paid for, you know, as a member of the U.S. Senate. But what I was going to say was, it was so interesting. This woman has five hair salons in where's she at? Fort Worth, Texas or something like that. Where's she at? She has 5 hair salons. She has 49 employees or whatever, right? Just under 50 so she can reach that magic, you know, she can stay off that magical rate. Provides no health insurance, nothing to any of them.
He's gaming the system because she probably needs 51st person, but she's overworking her employees.
But Brandon, what did she say though? she's in a business that don't really make no money, then what the hell you trying to expand for if you don't really make no money? This is what I mean. Like, I understand that small business owners have a lot of challenges and stuff, and I really do think that that's another conversation.
I don't believe that though.
How do we support small business? Oh, I don't believe that she's not making any money. She has 5 stores. Why do you have 5 stores then? Like, there has to be enough money in there for you. There has to be enough of a market if you're trying to expand. Don't nobody expand just to be expanding for shits and giggles. Like, there has to be a reason why you're expanding. She just can't make as much money as she wants to make. And that's a whole different conversation. Go ahead, Brandon.
Exactly. No, but that's the issue though. Like we saw with the first small business owner and the way he seemed completely aggrieved when Bernie Sanders came after him. And we saw with this one too. It's like they come there expecting what they normally get from both Democrats and Republicans, which is this lip service. Oh, you're a small business owner. You're the backbone of America. You're living the American dream. You own 8 franchises of Subways in 3 counties of Tennessee. You're living the American dream, aren't you? But he comes at her and he's like, no. It's like, if you can afford to have 5 stores, you can afford to provide healthcare for your employees. This is like, that's just the fact of the matter. And if you can't afford it, then maybe you should close one of your stores and have 4 franchises or have 4 hair salons and provide health insurance. And it's that sort of destabilization of this this black box we keep the quote unquote small business owner. And let's be honest, most people aren't small business owners. Like 5 hair salons isn't a small business. 1 hair salon is a small business. 5 hair salons is a franchise. Like you're not McDonald's of hair salons, but you have a bunch of them. And so, but what I liked about this discussion, this debate, or rather what was interesting, is that it's like you said about Bernie Sanders, you have both sides, both Ted and Bernie, like equating themselves to the other person and giving radically different solutions, right? Because like Ted was like, healthcare industry is incredibly corrupt. It's all about making profit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my solution. My solution is stupid. His common sense solutions. That's one of the things I dislike about the Republicans. They want to have common sense solutions to everything. That's another thing our culture just puts into this little. Like, of course, why would we need these complicated technocratic solutions to like healthcare? It's like, well, because healthcare is actually pretty complicated. The administration of healthcare is a little bit complicated. And we should have a nuanced view of it. But no, a complicated. We'll just removed all the barriers and competition will take care of it. It's like, what? That's not common sense,
right?
It was frustrating because, but I like Bernie. I like that Bernie was there. I do like that he was making the case for single payer, but I still say this was not his fight.
I agree, and
he was not the one who crippled Obamacare. Obama and the Democrats crippled Obamacare out the gate, and now you have Bernie again with a lot of things. Now he's coming out there to defend the Democrats' bad policies, because I don't care what anyone says. Obamacare did a lot of good, but it's bad legislation. And for those of you who point to pre-existing conditions and staying on your parents' health insurance until you're 26, those things are fine, but they don't need to be mutually inclusive. They could have been part of a separate package deal. Well, they could have been a part of a separate thing.
I also like how he kept putting the onus back on Republicans and challenging them. I absolutely agree. Bernie Sanders is not the person, but here's the thing though, right? Do we really want Chuck Schumer or somebody like that out there making the case for ACA, right? Like, these people, they can't do it. Right? Bernie's the one that can do it, because, most of these corporatists up the ladder Democrats, they can't do it because they can't say what he has said about insurance companies, right?
Because they can't speak to the people, right? Because fundamentally
real issues. They can provide a whole bunch of lip service and go, Republicans are bad. Ooh, boogeyman. But they really can't get down to the nitty gritty. Like I really appreciated when he put the onus back. And it's so funny when he said, like, you and the other Democrats, because everyone always like, oh, Bernie's not a real Democrat anyway. Well, apparently the Republicans see him as a real Democrat, that he's enough of a threat to them. But what I appreciated that he did was he put it back on them, right? He's like, okay, you keep trying to repeal it. You're not putting forth anything to fix it, to improve it. You're not providing an actual viable alternative. You're not saying anything. And I understand that the law itself is messed up. I'm not going to be an advocate for it either, because quite honestly, leaving it up to Republican governors like mine here in Georgia to decide whether or not they're going to expand Medicaid, like, you know, like I've shared, like we finally found my little sister's in college. She is her biological parents, my mother and my stepfather are both, you know, they both have limited incomes. They cannot afford to cover her health insurance as well. Like my mom barely has enough to cover her own, which I don't even remember. I didn't even follow up with her to see if she opted into the plan that she finally found for herself, which, as we discussed, is a bare minimum, but it's really more like catastrophic insurance, like the one woman who was talking about her $13,000 deductible, whatever. So like my sister who has rheumatoid arthritis, we finally found a plan, like whatever the highest plan was for her. It's still like almost $200 a month, which is a steal, but she's a college student with barely any income, which is why it's even only $200, right? And a very low deductible. But I'm splitting that with her on top of my own bills and my own family, my own kids and things like that. Because, you know, I mean, but we have American families like this all over the place where people are picking up the tab for their family members. Like it's problematic, because here's the thing though, me doing that keeps taxpayers in my community from having to pay for my sister to get emergency care for just basic preventative health. We have so many people who are getting regular preventative treatment through their county emergency healthcare systems, which is costing and burdening already burdened systems. Like people that are getting treated for things like diabetes, high blood pressure, very, very simple things that can be easily treated, but they're not. And then when they left untreated, it becomes potentially life-threatening. So now you have an even more advanced disease. You don't have healthcare, and you're getting seen in the emergency room where they're charging you like $5,000 for aspirin or something ridiculous like that, instead of actually improving the damn system. Everyone's like, well, how can you make the government's making people and they're not allowing you to have choices. What the hell choice? Like Bernie said, what choice is there when there isn't anything that you can afford? Like, okay, we have options in terms of healthcare. We have options in terms of insurance. When we leave it up to the insurance companies and they're like, well, we don't want to do this no more, deuces. Like, what option is there when you make people's ability to survive and exist a commodity, a transactional, industry, without any type of oversight? We have a serious problem on our hands.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, but that again, this comes back down to where we're at as a culture, right? So this notion that the private sector, there is nothing that they should not have their hands in. There's no industry, there's no part of our life or our society that shouldn't be monetized, and someone shouldn't be making a profit over it. And I think that when Bernie Sanders came out and said, no, healthcare is a right. At a certain point, we need to say people's lives come before profit. But that's anathema to neoliberals. The idea that there are certain things that the private market shouldn't have there shouldn't be on the table when it comes to making money off of is anathema. They don't believe that. That's not what neoliberalism is about. But healthcare should be one of those things that you really shouldn't be making a profit off of administering healthcare to somebody or being in between someone and their doctor. And so we get to this point where this is about a fundamental shift in the way people need to think. And that's why when it comes down, I can understand why Bernie Sanders would be defending Obamacare. And I think Ted Cruz laid out the reason why you'd have to is because what the Republicans are trying to do with this fundamentally flawed plan is present it as though it is akin to actual government mandated healthcare, or rather government administered healthcare. They're trying to pretend like Obamacare is the same as single payer or Medicare for all or the public option, and that if Obamacare is allowed to be repealed, when the fight for single payer or Medicare or the public option comes up, it will be, well, last time we had government administered healthcare, it didn't work, premiums skyrocketed, the private insurance industry was as profitable as it ever was, and it was basically just a handout to the insurance companies. It's like, of course it was, because this is not government administered healthcare. This is mandatory health insurance. This is mandatory private health insurance, and that's not the same thing as government administered health care. And so we end up in a situation where you have to defend Obamacare now, because if you don't defend Obamacare, it becomes exponentially harder to ever move, forward from Obamacare to single payer. I think Bernie Sanders made that point. He explicitly made that point. He was like, this was a good start. It helped people in the short term, but we've seen its flaws, and the only way to fix its flaws is to move to either the public option or single payer. But I do think we should address some of the good points that Ted Cruz made, even though they're not really legitimate. I'll put this out there first.
Good points, but still not legitimate points.
Well, no, the first thing is that Ted Cruz didn't have any arguments, right? Ted Cruz didn't have any data. He didn't have anything to support his points besides anecdotes. He had a bunch of like small anecdotes about things that he heard happen to somebody somewhere. A lot of vague stories about things that occur in Canada or in the UK that he couldn't verify, but happened to old people or children or babies or puppies, things that were meant to tug at people's heartstrings, but aren't indicative of anything. But what he did bring up, of course, he brought up the con, like, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your health insurance plan. It's just like, come on. It's true. President Obama did say you could keep your health insurance plan, right? He did say that. He probably said it 37 times. I find it a bit weird that he knows exactly how many times he said it. That's a bit petty, even for me. Petty. But it's super petty.
It's very like Zodiac killer-ish, right?
It's something that Dexter from Dexter would say.
Yes.
Something like, you tried to, anyway, the point is this, like, yeah, but a lot of those insurance plans that people were forced to get rid of, they weren't actually coverage. They were catastrophic health insurance plans that were kind of worse than nothing, right? They were worse than nothing because they gave the appearance that you were covered. And so you led your life in relative certainty until you got something worse than the flu. Then you went to the doctor, like, you're not covered for this. You're not covered for a heart transplant. You're not covered for, you're not covered for X, you're not covered for Y, you're not covered for Z. And Ted Cruz wants to go back to that, right? He wants to go back to quote unquote choice. He wants to go back to where everyone is free in like the open market, the free market, to make rational choices about what kind of health care they need. I keep making these things with my hand. But here's the unfortunate reality. You cannot make a rational choice about healthcare, right? For a lot of reasons. A, you can't predict the future, and B, you're not a doctor. And I think that's something that people we have to get over in our, from a society. You can't be your own doctor. Why we need the government, public sector to step in and say, here, there are certain things when it comes to healthcare you can't have. And we do that because you're not a doctor and you are incapable of making a rational choice about the proper healthcare you need. We can't tell you everything you need, but we can tell you what is off the table. Same with education. Let's bring Betsy DeVos in here. We have the government, so you are incapable of making rational choices about certain. This is all right. This is not like buying a car. Rather, this is not like buying a television where you can simply look at the television you see.
Brandon, what game are you playing in the background?
Enter the Gungeon.
I'm sorry. The chat room just wondered. It was like, what is he playing in the background?
Well, okay, but here's my larger point. Like, healthcare is not a commodity like a TV is, or like a car is. You can't simply people do not have the innate capability of going in and making a rational choice about what kind of health insurance they need, because frankly, they just don't have that kind of education or training, and it's just something that people aren't capable of doing. And that's the purpose of regulation. The purpose of regulation and the purpose of the public sector is to say, hey, you know what? There are certain things that you just can't, as a private citizen, be expected to know or do.
Absolutely.
So society steps in. He did make a good point about the fact that private insurance companies are making bank on ACA.
Yeah, I found that interesting. I found it really interesting, some of the points that Ted Cruz was trying to make, to blame it, but he kept trying to blame it as the ACA versus, nah, dude, that's just your screwed up American capitalism at work and your insurance lobby on steroids. I find this resistance for recalcitrance. Everyone agrees that the law has issues, right? And apparently some of the Republicans, at least Ted Cruz, but who really agrees with him? I mean, he had to threaten and convince his own party to have a shutdown 3 years ago because he couldn't get his way over repealing the ACA. This is why I have a hard time taking him seriously. But no, seriously though, right? They admit that, okay, insurance payments and profit. When he made the argument about insurance profits increasing, doubling, I'm just like, okay, are you making an anti-capitalist argument right here? What are you doing? This isn't going in the direction you think it goes in. And I understand, the inclination to say we should have less government. but this isn't necessarily, you know what I'm saying? Like less government is not going to do what you're saying it's going to do in this scenario in terms of the insurance corporations. Like we don't have certain regulations in place. It's going to be a freaking free for all, and most of us wouldn't even have insurance, right? Like even the slightest things would be considered pre-existing conditions. Like, I mean, the fact that you've had major surgeries, i.e. the C-sections he's so proud of, right? Is that a pre-existing condition? Do you get to then deny someone because of that? Like I just don't understand when he's talking about like, we don't want more government. Then why is it that you're so quick to tell women what they can do with their bodies, or you want to deny people access to contraception? Government shouldn't be in my bedroom. Government shouldn't care what pills I'm taking.
I mean, I hope they don't, but
well,
but that's his game, right? His game is he creates this sort of, he tries to make things that are the result of the neoliberalization and the deregulation of industry. It's something intrinsic about the public sector or the government. It's like these things that he's saying, well, hey, this is a problem because, rather these profits are are a problem because industry making money off of people at a blah, 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 blah. It's like, instead of using that to say, well, the problem is obviously the private industry. The problem is obviously a sort of vulture capitalism that we exist. He uses that to attack the government when the government has already been stripped of most of its ability to either by actual law or by, corporate money to do anything about these things. So he's basically trying to make something that is not the fault of, I would say, something that's the fault of privatization, the fault of the public sector, and use that to further privatize under the guise of, well, this is just the government failing again. It's like, yeah, it's failing, absolutely, but it's failing because it's too small, not because it's too big.
Had to unmute myself. Sorry, guys.
We should talk. I mean, the debate was kind of just, it was, I don't know, it was kind of just blasé, right?
So a sister hit me up. She's like, who the hell asked for this? Why are they doing this? I agree with you. It was kind of blasé. I kind of thought the same thing. I'm like, why the hell is Bernie Sanders debating Ted Cruz about healthcare reform? Probably because there's so many Republicans that are now, at least privately, beginning to recognize they can't just gut and repeal. And he's the only one they can find that is adamantly, well, besides Paul Ryan, and Paul Ryan probably would suck at this even more than Ted Cruz. Or maybe because Ted Cruz is a senator too, I really don't know. But like, they can't just repeal it outright. No matter what Ted Cruz says, they just can't do it. I mean, they could, but like he pointed out in the map, like you said, he made a lot of false logic leaps. These are, look at this map. This is an electoral map. It looks kind of like the map that elected Donald Trump. Ding, 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 ding. A lot of poor people who don't have the access to or the needed, resources to like actually thrive, voted for Donald Trump, whether out of ignorance or they didn't actually vote because only 25% of the voting population actually even voted for him, whatever the case may be, right? But like that line, that's the case of why people should not, Democrats, are you paying attention? Like, this is why people should not be voting Republican at all. Third party candidates, are you paying attention? Like, let's talk about that for a second, right? We have all these people who are just like, well, don't mess with the Democrats, go through green or go with this third party or be independent or whatever. Okay, great, wonderful. Let's start running some candidates. When are the filing deadlines? What's your ground game? Where are your volunteers? Who do you have in place to do this? Because I'm absolutely with your enthusiasm, and I absolutely believe that it needs to happen. Like I had someone mention to me, why aren't you talking about the Greens running a candidate, running 435 candidates in the upcoming election? Really? First I've heard of it. I will be asking questions about it, but where's the plan? Right? Like if it's in somebody's head and you guys have been talking about it in the living room, that's cool. But like 2018 is a lot closer than you realize. And all the challenges that people had in terms of being able to get on ballots and signatures and things of that nature, what does that look like right now where you are? So if we want to talk about who we're running going forward, who's going to replace these people, who's going to be able to really be champions of the people, fine. Don't want to mess with the Dems? No problem. I'm right there with you. But what's the alternative? Because we can't just afford to just check out a process and be like, okay, well, screw both parties. We don't care, because they're still making decisions. right? They're still doing stuff. They're still out here. Like we have to have a conversation on multiple levels. Go ahead.
The Democratic Party is so obstinate to change. And I know people are still calling for an autopsy of the Democratic Party. People are still like, oh, Republicans did an autopsy in 2012 why they lost. Why? Like here's the
Democrats don't care why they lost. They're just trying to get back on top.
The Democrats, no, it's not they don't care. The Democrats know why they lost, right?
That's what I'm saying. They don't care. If they cared, they wouldn't be trying to shove Tom Perez down our throats. Like, I'm just saying.
Oh, exactly. The Democratic establishment knows exactly why they lost. They know 100% why they lost. They know 100% why they had to rig the primary so that Bernie, whether he would win or lose, would not be a legitimate threat to Hillary Clinton. It's because people don't like their ideas, and their base, like the Democratic base, does not mesh with the Democratic establishment in a way that the Republican base, the Republican establishment, and so it people need to get out of their head. The Democratic Party is still trying to come to terms with why they lost. They know why they lost from like a very functional standpoint. What they're trying to figure out is how can we win without changing ourselves? And like, how can we win without abandoning our corporate donors? How can we win and still be neoliberals? How can we better package our message of fear? How can we better pretend like people are behind us? And so like what they're working on, whether it's with, the David Brock retreats or their third way think tanks, is, well, hey, how can we put a better spin on neoliberalism? And one of their ways seems to be, well, we're going to have Bernie Sanders go out in there and speak for us. We'll see if, he can obfuscate the truth. The fact that we're not going to make any changes, but every time he goes out and speaks for them, he puts forth the bill. He's like, okay, well, you know what? They seem to be learning their lesson now. Like, well, how about we try getting pharmaceutical courses down? It's like, nope, can't do it. Cory Booker can't do it. Sorry, Canada has dangerous drugs. Canada is a lawless wasteland where people are just popping red pills. Only God knows what they're doing. And so it's like, it's frustrating. And they couldn't even stop DeVos, right? They could not even stop DeVos today. Is it DeVos? I always get
DeVos. I was saying her name. It's like Voss Water. I was saying her name wrong for a while. It's a couple of them whose names are put in. But you know what? Hey, American education. I don't know.
I mean, but American education is another example. No, American education is another example of something like, DeVos is another example of this. They're opposed to DeVos. Even Cory Booker was tweeting out how this was a loss for public education. It's like, but the same people who are opposed to DeVos were in favor of her policies for the past 8 years. It's like whatever DeVos represents, people were in favor of it until it had a face like DeVos's. And in a lot of ways, I've been floating this out there. It's like it's only been 18 days since Trump has become president. I think like exactly 18 or maybe 19, but in a lot of ways, the Trump presidency feels like satire. It feels like everything people don't like or think about America being taken to its extreme. And it's just like, America's corrupt. Look how corrupt it is. DeVos gets through. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's like, it feels like this is a story being written by someone who is trying to critique the worst elements of American politics. And no, it does. It's like, cause come on. I fear that Democrats have been playing weak so long. They've been playing this sort of symbolic resistance game versus Republicans for the past 8 years that they don't know how to proactively resist anymore. They don't know how to go on the offensive in a real way because they haven't done it in so long. They haven't been on the offensive in a real way in decades. They've just been slowly eroding themselves, and I mean, at best, maybe they're trying now, but they finally woke up and they're like, oh, we have to, actually fight now, but they don't have any of the tools. They gave them away over the past 8 years, over the past 16 years, over the past 24 years, and the tools just don't exist anymore for them to fight with. And that's too bad, but they still have to go. And it's this question of whether they're complicit or stupid is irrelevant because they're ineffective. And unfortunately, and I know people are like, well, the Democrats held the line versus DeVos. That's not good enough. Like, I'm sorry to be that person, but do or do not. There is no try. I mean,
right? They held the line against DeVos, but that's because people care about education. But didn't nobody really give a damn, at least in terms of holding the line or really taking a strong stance in terms of, let's say, HUD, for example, right? They rolled over like, oh, well, he said he's going to worry about lead. That's cool. I mean, yeah, you hold the line, you don't budge. You even got like folks like Manchin to vote against her, right? I mean, she plagiarized her questions. You know, we've now segued a little bit into today's confirmation, confirmation earlier today of Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education. I accidentally said Secretary of State earlier tonight. I was like, whoa, that's even scarier. But, you know, we've seen, you know, it's like, ooh, should we celebrate you for doing your job? That's like what you're supposed to do. She's a horrible nominee. But in the grand scheme of nominees and stuff like that, I mean, like, she's not the only one. And we've seen Democrats, even our so-called stalwarts of progressivism, kind of like go soft when they should have gone hard. I mean, it's really easy to go hard against someone who's really, really bad, right? Like a DeVos that pretty much everyone is against. You could even get some Republicans to acknowledge. And in fact, 2 Republican senators did vote against her in response to what they were hearing from their constituencies. But you know, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you know, like, it's not even that she's bad, right? But it's that she's overtly bad, right? She is cartoonishly bad. She's like, as I say, she's satirically bad. Insofar that, you know, her brother is like the head of Blackwater. And they believe in a holy war, both in education and like in Iraq, and like these things are cartoonish. That's why like it reminds me of like a literature piece about how like a bad one about the folly of the American political system. But also we have to remember there are special interests against Betsy DeVos. You know, like there are special interest groups out there who are lobbying against her. You know, like she was not completely. She was not. You know, like, rather, but here's the unfortunate fact: she's no worse, really, than someone like Mnuchin. She's no worse than someone like Sessions. She's no worse than someone like Pompeo. Definitely not worse than Pompeo. And she's not that much worse than people like Kelly. She might not have the experience, but you know, we're talking about like, you know, war criminals here. We're talking about people who are in favor.
1329C in the chat room says she is an SNL skit out of hell.
Exactly. But you know,
she's definitely caricature or something.
Yeah, but Pompeo and Kelly are torturers. And they're in favor
of torture. But that's okay. We're okay with that. Americans are completely fine with that as long as it's not our legitimate, our own people. We don't care.
Oh yeah. But they're torturers. And so it's like, yeah, but here's the thing, right? There's no anti-fascist lobby. There's no anti-torture lobby. There's no well, I mean, I guess there's anti-torture special interest with ACLU, but you know what I mean. There's no like anti-surveillance state. Again, there's at the ACLU, but there's not a large movement against these things the way there should be, because they've been normalized in a lot of ways. And so it's frustrating for people to have put in so much focus on DeVos. Like, had they stopped DeVos, had they even managed to stop DeVos, it would have been some big win. It's because no, we have torturers in charge of the CIA.
But that's because the bar is set so low, right? Like, I mean, once the hubris, again, this goes back to hubris. Hubris has been my favorite word of 2016. It will most definitely be a part of my vocabulary in 2017. I mean, I will be wearing my hubris shirt most likely tomorrow night too. But you know, it's once they.
I think your microphone went off, right? Okay. Yeah, no, it's hubris, but the Democratic Party is really good about their bar for success. They're constantly lowering what constitutes success in the realm of the Senate or in the realm of governing, for them at least. You know, for 8 years, success was defined as having a black president. No matter what occurred during those 8 years, we had a black president. Things were great. I disagree, and let me bring this back into the debate. When Bernie Sanders talked about those job numbers, I disagreed with those. Like, those job numbers are not as good as they appear on the surface. A lot of those are low-paying jobs. A lot of those are jobs that are worse than the jobs that were lost. A lot of those jobs are simply not in places where people can actually take them. And so it is what it is, but it's just the Democratic Party has conditioned liberals, which I guess form the crux of who support them in a lot of ways, to accept whatever they get as a victory. And I think they jazzed them up to accept, hey, we're going to stop DeVos. It's like, well, and now like, oh, well, they tried at least. It's like, trying is, I'm sorry, ineffective, like, sorry, theoretically being on the correct side of an issue is not a justification for ineffectiveness in the governing.
Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, great. Yes. So thank you so much for being with us again. This is the Noah and Brandon Late Show. We need a name. And apologies. Sometimes the Blue Yeti mic is an awesome microphone. This USB cord is crap. And sometimes it just randomly stops working. Ben is gonna hook me up with an attachment. So yeah, this is how it is when you're on Soros payroll. Oops, I wasn't supposed to tell everybody we get paid by Soros. Yeah. Anyway, joke, JK. But no, serious. But you're right about DeVos. And as someone said in the chat room, DeVos is low hanging fruit, right? And no, we don't really get paid money by Soros. But I have a janky cord if we did. But you're right about. But no, someone said that she's low hanging. Yeah. Someone said she was low hanging fruit. We've been saying that. I mean, I just look at the way they rolled over and just let Ben Carson just waltz in there. I mean, this brought me to another conversation, a question I posed on Twitter earlier. Like, okay, let's say that what's the guy's name for Supreme Court? Glockenspiel, Greenhauser,
Gorsuch.
I like
many radical Christians.
Gorsuch. Many radical Christians Scalia, Gorsuch. No, seriously, Glockenspiel. I just like saying Glockenspiel. But Gorsuch, if they're able to actually like resist, right? That's a whole nother conversation about what is actually resistance in this era with led by the Democrats. But if they're actually able to resist and refuse, absolutely deny that, what happens, right? Are they going to really be able to sustain that? Are they really going to be able to keep Trump's nominees at bay the entire 4 years? Or until he gets impeached and Pence becomes president? Like, are they really going to be able to do that? Or are they going to do we get to a point where they use up all their political capital, so to speak, and they're afraid and they just let things slide? I mean, we even saw some so-called liberals and stuff trying to justify and rationalize why Democrats should get on board and supporting this already. So like this whole thing about what we've seen that with these nominations, everyone's making that grandstand against Sessions right now. I just saw that Elizabeth Warren has been forbidden and she's not allowed to speak.
And apparently she's furious, but you know what? It's too late for all that fury. I like Elizabeth Warren's economic policies, but she's the master of symbolic progressivism. It's like it's too late because when it came time to actually do something, she's like, I'm gonna see where this plays out. So like you're furious now. It's in the game. It's fourth quarter.
Yes,
they keep getting through. Like Sessions is getting through. So all you could have really done is go up there with Coretta Scott King's letter and try to shame them, but they don't care. And so, you want to make a grand gesture, and it's unfortunate to that vibe.
Let's talk about that for a second, right? Because they're using the voice of a dead Black woman to try and shame. Because this is actually something I wrote about earlier about using the voices of other oppressed people to try to shame or push people to doing something. Like, I don't understand why we think that somehow this, and I understand why they're using Coretta Scott King's letter, not just because she's Coretta Scott King, excuse me, but also because this letter was written to another noted racist of the Senate, Strom Thurmond, back when they were trying to confirm him previously for another position, right? So I get why it's being used, but at the same time, you can't like this is for show. Like you said, they're holding the line. The Republicans are holding the line, right? They're not breaking ranks. They're not I'm even wondering what the final vote is going to be in terms of Democrats, because I can't remember the guy's name from Delaware, but he's already been on record as saying, oh, that's my friend and he's really nice and he just believes what he believes, but he believes something different from me. So you already have Democrats who are wishy-washy already. So it's like, you guys are making this brave stand and prove that you're not racist, because then this gets into our whole conversation about identity politics that we've had off and on. Democrats will wield the we're the better party because we are not overtly racist like the Republicans, but they have their more subtle ways that they do things. And it's like, it's not that you're not racist too. I know you like to think that you're better, but like, you're just not as overtly or really bad racist as the Republicans are. And we see that here with this Sessions thing. It's really easy to make all these brave, really statements and grand gestures against Sessions because he really is a despicable character. Cory Booker's so brave because he got out there and he spoke really tough. But it's like, where the hell have y'all been at on issues that really mattered? Not that this does not matter, but this is like a really easy thing to get all righteous and riled up about.
Absolutely. And this righteous indignation is is skin crawling when they did nothing to combat the conditions that led us to this point. And it's only once things are finally too late that they would actually get righteously, that they would actually get this sort of righteous anger. But these are the same people who simultaneously don't want to do this autopsy. They don't want to be held accountable for how we got here. They just want us to, forget that and move on and give them brownie points for being angry that we finally fell off the cliff. But they kept us there. And their solution isn't to actually combat the conditions that led us there. It's just to go back and keep perching on the cliff. They don't the solution is not to go from, the ideal Democratic solution isn't to go from Trump to Sanders, it's to go from Trump to Clinton. That is not a solution at all. And so, they say they want to wheel out Curtis Scott
Trump
King
to Cory Booker or somewhere along that lines, right?
It's like they haven't, they don't actually want to solve the problem. They just want to treat the symptoms.
Well, no, because they benefit from the other side of the same coin, right? Like they're the good side of this whole corrupt. Yeah,
of course. I mean, my critique of them is meant to prevent them from being able to benefit from these showy forms of progressivism. It's too late for this stuff. They're going to hold party lines. You don't get any points for voting against someone who's going to win anyway at this point, because the people who might have lost, you voted for, you should have held the line the entire way.
Well, on the flip side, I do think there is something to be said about those people who are willing, like you said, like on the one hand, no, you don't get props for voting against someone who's already going to lose. But on the flip side, it is good to see that people aren't just like going across the aisle like a Manchin, like a Tim Kaine, like some of these other people have done. But at the same time, what does that really mean? We have people who are willing to wield progressivism, to make a stance because they might be up for re-election soon, or they might be trying to make another power play, versus those who are just like, oh, can't we all just get along? I'll make a power play in a different direction, right? Because they're not really progressive. They're really these moderate centrist, corporatist, Republicans who pose as Democrats, right? So when you look at someone like a Tim Kaine in Virginia, as close as Virginia was, he's probably making calculations the way he is, thinking that he has to worry about winning over a completely different base in Virginia than maybe when he first got elected or whatever. So it's really interesting to see the dynamics, but at the same time, what Democrats don't understand is people are tired. People are tired of you playing politics with our lives, like plain and simple. Half the country did not show up and vote, not because, they don't care about racism or they don't care about this stuff. People are just tired and they don't believe that what they do makes a difference. And now suddenly we have this resistance, and we're supposed to believe that the Democrats are the way. And, no diss to the Green Party either, but I'm yet to believe that I've yet to see proof that any party is the absolute way for American people when it talks about coming forward, because I don't see anybody out there, or you may have people who are members of these parties who are organizing, engaging people on the local level, and I'm not talking about just knocking on doors, telling people to get out and do whatever the hell they're telling people to do when they're knocking on doors with this knock on doors thing, but like really actually engaging and going out, whether it's into rural communities and the holler and talking about these issues, because folks are like, well, these are the people who confirmed DeVos and we need to primary them. We need to run against them. We need to do this. We need to replace them. Okay, what relationships on the ground do you actually have in place? What have you been doing to earn people's trust? Because whether you're going into an urban community where people have checked out of the process because they feel like people have let them down and do not engage them, or you're going into a rural community, it's about relationship building and trust. It's about really actually working with people. It's about being there after the vote happens, right? Like who's actually setting that groundwork and who's actually doing that framework. And that's who's going to come out on top going forward. But and we also need to stop, making excuses for Democrats when they want to center people like Rahm Emanuel, like David Brock in their presence, or whether even they keep them off to the periphery or whatever the case may be. Like, we can't break bread with you. We can't trust you to do what needs to be done because you still got filth in your midst. Like you still got your own garbage that you got to take care of that you have not dealt with.
And that's why Democrats will continue to lose, right? Because they're too willing to get in bed with people who are distasteful to their base. And this is not about purism, or rather it is about purism. Screw it. Let's talk about it. Everyone is purist about certain things. And anyone who's telling you that they're not is basically just saying that you don't have the right to have your own limits, but they have the right to theirs. Because there are certain things that are non-starters for everybody. There are certain, and a lot of these white liberals or middle class liberals or upper middle class liberals, they don't understand why racism in all its forms might be a non-starter. But I bet they would understand why sexism in all its forms would be a non-starter, or any kind of thing that might implicate their lives. So at a certain point, the Democratic Party needs to start being a little bit more picky about who they choose to do deals with. And I mean, I'm a fan of David Sirota's work, but when he decided to go get in bed with David Brock, I was like, no, dude, come on. It's like this is ridiculous. It's just when are the Democratic Party going to clean their own house? And they don't have that much time for 2018. And you're right. A lot of these
organizations, it's not that far away as people think, especially if you're talking about running candidates, particularly if you're talking about running independent third-party candidates and you don't already have a mechanism in place to do so.
Or even primarying people. Even primarying people. I think a lot of these places, you have these organizations spring up overnight. Are they organizing? Are they getting on the ground? Like, yeah, you have 3 million followers on YouTube. That's nothing.
Yeah, that doesn't translate. That doesn't translate to actual people votes out in a district. But what I think the point you just made about going back to what you said about purity, like people having purity politics. But also, I'm trying to think of what the other point was. You just made. I just lost it. But what you were just saying though about getting out on the what we both keep saying, like there are candidates around us. Even today, like earlier this evening, I had a chance to talk with Billy Easton, who is executive director of the Lines of Quality Education in New York, along with Michael Redwine, and I did a short interview earlier this evening. We talked a little bit about Betsy DeVos. What is having her Secretary of Education mean for us, in our communities and schools and stuff. And while it means a lot, it also doesn't, right? Like it means that there's a lot that happens education wise, of course, that comes down from the federal government, the way they set priorities, spending, investment, things like that, right? I mean, there's also a lot more when you talk about in terms of, colleges and education and funding, the way sexual assault. I mean, there's a complexity of issues. When we're talking about just regular, K through 12 education and stuff, there's a lot that happens at the state and local level. And we have been so caught up in these arguments and fights about the federal level and what we need to be doing. Not that they're not important, but we do really, really need people to focus locally. So what's going on with your school board? How is your local school system even organized, right? Like, do you have a local school council? Do you have like clusters? Like we have these area clusters here in Atlanta, and they have area cluster meetings, which I need to start going to.
So it's Charleston, South Carolina, the same thing.
How is it even? How is it even set up? How is your school board set up? Who's running for your school board? When are the school board elections? Like these are things, especially if we were talking about we have crappy Democrats and Republicans where we live, right? And we want to start running alternative candidates for people. You got to start building that groundwork now. You can't decide like 2 months before an election, like, oh, if you have a small enough jurisdiction where you can have some that you have some ability and name recognition, go for it. But if you're in a larger place like here in Atlanta, or if you're in a larger area, or even if you're in some place that's geographically, it's a larger location, maybe not as heavily populated, you have a lot of groundwork you need to do. When are your filing dates? How much money do you need? I mean, like, we need to start small. People are saying, well, look at what the Tea Party did. The Tea Party invested in these local level races, and that's the other way they were able to take over.
What we have here? Sorry, you know what we have here?
A failure to communicate.
Absolutely. We have a failure to communicate. And the issue is
a failure to communicate.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Because these people, whether you're talking about Hillary Clinton or whoever is they're trying to sort of trickle down coercion. Like they refuse to actually go out there and talk to people outside of their bubble. They want to reaffirm their beliefs and their success within their own little sphere, but they're not going to these local level races. They're not doing this. They're just hoping that this hashtagtivism like trickles out to the real world, and it simply won't. The unfortunate reality is, unless you're doing real on the ground organizing, something that the Tea Party did, right? So when you compare like the Tea Party's protest of President Obama or whatever to the Women's March, they had so many organizers at the Tea Party's march, so many organizers, so many emailing lists, so many people getting signed up to do actions afterwards. And it's because they had a long-term plan. And I think people get really focused on the AstroTurf part of the Tea Party and not enough on how how mobilized they were and how willing they were to primary everyone from the dog catcher on up. Like if you didn't agree with them, you were getting primaried. And it comes back to the Democrats and their ability to convince their base and a lot of their, their rank and file of these very pyrrhic, very symbolic victories. And like where it doesn't make a difference how many seats we lose, we're the smart people. If Republicans are winning, like we're smarter, we don't say the N-word. It's like, but you're still losing. You're like that's sadder. Like she's the public. She's the popular vote president. That's not how the game is won. I'm sorry. That's like losing a game of Monopoly and saying, well, I own the most property. Like that's cool.
Think in Monopoly, owning the most property, I think that's part of how that works.
Nah, it's not really. You have to have the most money, and also like the game isn't over until someone goes bankrupt anyway. Or until you get
funny story.
And you flip the table over.
It has nothing to do with anything but funny story. Well, actually, no, it has a lot to do with everything, I guess. So when we play Monopoly, we don't play Monopoly with one of my sisters. My sisters play Monopoly one holiday with my brother. My brother, who's the next oldest. My sister is the fourth oldest out of the 5 of my mom's kids. So there's 7 of us all together. But my sister is the fourth oldest. Maybe she's the fourth oldest overall. Anyway, so my brother's the next oldest. I'm the oldest. My brother's the next oldest. My sister's the fourth oldest. And they're playing with my kids too, right? Apparently, my sister is making up these rules. She's talking about some house rules. Well, whatever. We ain't even at her house. But she's talking about house rules. My sister somehow owns the jail. I've never played Monopoly where someone owned the jail and you had to pay them a fine when you landed in jail. My sister owned free parking. She owned the jail. She made up all these rules and they went along with it until finally my brother came downstairs. He was like, I don't remember playing like this. He was like, sis got me, like I'm in jail. I think my brother had went bankrupt and he was so angry with her, right? But this is like how Republicans are doing stuff. They're making up rules that don't even exist, talking about, oh, well, we get to set the rules now because we got a mandate. Let's go back to, I'm sorry, I'm real scatterbrained because I got my second win now after my long nap, old person here. Ted Cruz talking about the mandate that repealing the ACA got in this election. How the hell is 25% of a vote a mandate? Like
the mandate was always made up. Even going back to your popular vote president argument, right? Like, proponents of the ACA have a better argument for quote unquote mandate, considering they got more votes for the candidate that actually wants to keep it. Right? Like that whole mandate thing when you didn't even get like a really sizable majority. It's like the dumbest thing ever. The mandate was always something stupid that either a political scientist came up with or someone once said and everyone decided was a real thing. And it's just become part of our political culture and like something that people say, and with political capital, that when ultimately you can do whatever you want, right? Like you just do it. And people will decide if they like it at the time or if they don't like it, whether it's contiguous with your beliefs or not. Like it just depends. Like the mandate has always just been an excuse for why people either are allowed or not allowed to do something, and no one's called them out on the BS yet. It's just like it's BS. It's made up. It's fake. Like it's not a real thing. Like it's not something like it's like I don't know how to describe it in a way it doesn't seem like I'm dismissing it offhand, but I'm dismissing it offhand. It's like our elections are so close when it comes to popular vote that it's no one ever wins by more than like what 5%, and people barely vote. And I think that's what you said. 25% voted for Trump. Yeah, 25% voted for Hillary Clinton too. It's like there's like this notion, and this is one of those things that we talk about when the Democratic Party is like that they're disingenuous. It's like the Republicans are, a fringe party. It's like you are too. The Democratic Party is also a fringe party. Both parties are supported by a fringe number of Americans because that's just the way our system works. It's meant to both systemically and psychologically disenfranchise people, make them disinterested in what's going on. And so the Democratic Party is also wildly unpopular. The Democratic Party is not popular. It's just less distasteful rhetorically. But people don't like them because they're disingenuous. Like they're socially liberal, quote unquote, but economically conservative, which doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah. So the other thing that happened, I think that's absolutely great. So I think that happened. There's one more thing that happened that I think kind of goes into this fall progressivism, fall liberalism, like rah, we're so much better than them. Was this, during the Super Bowl, you had all these commercials, right? They really all these messagey political commercials. I was actually really appalled because the Super Bowl is supposed to be a time where you see like really fun commercials and you laugh and you like have a good time with your family and stuff like that. We're not even going to talk about how awful it was that the Atlanta Falcons lost. I'm not really an NFL person. I always by default root for the Giants, having spent my formative years in New York City. But apparently the two men in my life.
I'm a Patriots fan.
You're a Patriot. Oh Lord. You're gonna make me disown
because they're scumbags. No. Because like they're scumbags.
Well, my dad is a Green Bay fan from childhood, and my uncle is a Cowboys fan. So how I grew up to like the Giants, I don't know. Maybe one of my other uncles.
Tom Brady is probably the worst person to ever play sports. Like he's overrated from like an actual sportsman, like from actual like quarterback standpoint. His offensive line is amazing, but he's overrated.
I think one of the kids said he was like what, a 6th round draft pick. He wasn't like an early pick or something like that, right?
He's decent. He's not great the kicker without there completing passes. But the point is he's decent enough. Like he has a lot of support. But from a personal level, he's a scumbag. Then after he's done, after like, knowing that he's a scumbag, he goes up there like, I want to thank God for this. And it's just like, God didn't help you. Come on.
Well, so what I was gonna.
I'm not super into that stuff, but if there's a God, he wasn't helping you.
So what I was going to say was, these commercials, right? No, you're fine. I blame it all on Lady Gaga anyway. Like if Lady Gaga had bought out Beyonce for telephone, everything would have been saved and we would have won. But no, seriously though, right? Like I swear the whole city of Atlanta must have been in mourning because driving out to work on Monday, traffic was like effortless. There was barely anyone out there. There was no stop and go traffic. It was wild. But the commercials, right? You had these commercials about, we're all one America, basically, right? The diversity, the good things that are so great. But this Lumber 84 commercial. So Craig and I and the kids, we're sitting there with my sisters over, we're watching the game, we're eating and stuff. The commercials, some of the commercials come on. The Mr. Clean commercial weirded me out so much. But this Lumber 84 commercial comes on. And when it comes on, if you haven't seen it already, check it out. When it comes on, you don't really know what the hell is going on. All of a sudden, you're seeing the journey of a mother and her daughter. They're coming from some other country. I assume it's Mexico, just because of their means of travel. Don't know. They could have been coming from someplace else farther in Central America. But you're watching this video and you're watching this commercial. And you're like, what is going on? They're like, wait a minute. Is this a commercial about folks trying to get into the U.S.? Like, what the hell? Like, what is the purpose? Like, what are they doing? So finally, and as a parent watching it, you just see a parent and a child. And despite any of your political leanings, I think, most people see a parent and a child and you empathize with whatever the situation is. But we're still sitting here watching this commercial, like we're looking at each other like, what is going on? It's a stunning commercial. It's like, wow, that this is a commercial. But then you have to go online to watch the rest of it to see how it ends, because it ends like, I think it's at night and they're like camping out on the side of a road or something like that, right? Along their journey. And you see them get on back of a truck and you see them walking really far and, all these different places and stuff. And they're clearly traveling with everything they have. So you go online and you watch the end. And really, ultimately, what happens is there's a big door. There's a big welcoming door that they're able to walk through to come into the U.S., basically, right? And this is a Lumber 84 area commercial.
Then it's just like, bam, buy Pepsi.
Well, it's Lumber 84.
Mexican
Lumber
Coke.
84 is a large lumber. Mexican Coke is really good, but that's a whole nother conversation. Well, Brazilian Coke. Brazilian Coke is really good. Like everything in Brazil tastes so much better, but that's a whole nother story. But you go online because Fox rejected the commercial, so they put the 90 seconds that they put on TV, and then you go on their website to watch the rest. And everyone's praising it, and it's like all these commercials were getting all this praise. People were like, "Oh my God, this is so great." Probably because most of us did not go online and watch the commercial till later. The outlet Latino Rebels actually did a piece yesterday about the commercial, why people should not be in such a rush to cheer it on, because you do. Because ultimately, at the end of the commercial, there's a big ass wall, and then there's a door for them to go through. And what they're saying is like, this is basically what Trump has depicted ever since 2015, when he very first started talking about this wall idea. And I thought it was a really interesting point to point out, because most of us would stop with what was on TV and not because I was sitting there trying to think, I'm like, why the hell is a lumber company based out of Pennsylvania have a commercial about someone traveling to the U.S. trying to get across the border? Like, what the hell is that all about?
Because they want their would-be youth to build a wall.
Or they're trying to promote, or it's a promotion for cheap labor for them. Like, I just didn't understand the point of Lumber 84. So anyway, the Latino Rebels has this really great piece, and they're talking about, they even pull statements from the CEO of the company, and she is pro-wall. She is so this great commercial that people are praising is actually from a corporation that's led by someone who is pro-wall, who supports Trump's wall, the effort for the wall, and thinks this is a good thing. And it really is this huge wall. And again, I'm not getting into the merits of like immigration reform and stuff like that with people, but we need to be careful with rushing to like even the Audi commercial that's like, oh, you know, we pay equity and blah, blah, blah. When like your resistance is based on cheering corporations for their like fake ass wokeness.
Yeah, because that's
what's the problem.
That's what's marketable now, right? You can't afford to take being woke is marketable. Yeah, you can't afford to take a non-stance, like, or even a biz. Rather, you can't make a business decision based on what makes the most money. I think the Uber guy found that out. They're just trying to make the most money. Is not going to, in this new political culture, is going to get you, crucified on Twitter. But in making wokeness marketable, it's going to peel away a lot of the sort of people who don't actually pay attention, because like all they have to do is brand themselves as woke, and it's just like, well, what we actually spend our money on, what we spend these profits on, whether we're actually giving to Republicans, like whether we have ties to the Koch brothers, that stuff goes away with commercial that is just, anti-wall. And I think this is a larger lesson we have to learn about our politicians, about our corporations, that they are not people, and that they do not have to be what's the word? They don't have to be consistent with their actions and words, because they don't have any shame. And if they lie to you or if they mislead you, they don't really care, because either they have your money or they have your vote. So this notion that you can, like, let's Warren back in this notion that you're going to shame people or you're going to shame Sessions into it just doesn't work.
So let me read you this statement. So this is one of the statements about the Super Bowl commercial from Maggie Bagerko, probably butchering, public school education, probably butchering her last name too. President owner of Lumber 84 Lumber. I kept saying Lumber 84 Lumber. The intent of the Super Bowl commercial, as well as the conclusion on journey84.com, was to show that 84 Lumber is a company of opportunity. It isn't about my beliefs, who I voted for, or the wall. It's about highlighting the characteristics of a person that will go to great lengths for a new opportunity. If the president wants to build a wall, then we want to make sure there is a door in that wall, a door that's open to those who choose to enter to our country legally. The journey of the mother and daughter was a demonstration of the human spirit, grit, determination, and hard work. These characteristics represent what makes 84 Lumber in our country great. We feel that embody those characteristics no matter where you're from. If that's you, our door is open. Like I said, check out Latino Rebels on Twitter. They are like all over this issue with the wall and the statement, the non-statement. And like I said, I'm retweeting it now. And it really is, and it's a wooden door. So you're right, Brandon. It's a wooden door. It's this big like cement, this huge like industrial side of a prison looking wall. Or if you watch Colony, it looks like the wall that they use to keep the humans locked in, their different areas. But like the door is wooden. So they want to be able to, like you said, they want to build the door for Trump's wall. And it's like, so you trying to angle for business? Like, I mean, it's wild. So there's a lot of clapback from Latinos Twitter about this wall issue.
Initially, that's what I
thought. This door.
Well, see, initially, what I thought it was a fake woke commercial. Like
clearly, that's what I thought it was too. And I was wow, that 84 Lumber commercial, that was.
But it's not fake. But it's not a fake woke commercial. What it is just like, it shouldn't matter who you voted for. It does. It's a well, can't we just agree to disagree commercial? It's a no matter who we voted for, the fascist or the neoliberal, I think we can all find common ground and agree that hard work and dedication pays off. It's like, what? It's like excuse me? But we see this a lot now, right? This sort of radical, it's funny. I was thinking about it earlier that people criticized in the 70s and 80s that, the postmodern movement, right? The idea that, hey, everyone's opinion is great. Everyone deserves to have their voice. Conservatives criticized that, like, ha ha ha, this is an irrational, unfact-based thinking. And now, but that's what, like that. But the people who benefit from that the most are conservatives, because they're out there, wanting us to I'm not conservatives, but they're out there wanting us to negotiate rationally and consider the opinions of fascists and neo-fascists. Let's just agree to disagree. There's nothing more postmodern than, or rather postmodern or morally relativist to the nth degree than fascists over whether people should be eradicated or not, and or hey, doesn't matter who you voted for. Someone who thinks I have the right to live in this country, or someone who doesn't think I have the right to live in this country.
It's not about
yes,
the wall.
It does.
They said it's not about the wall. It's about the door in the wall. Like you said, they're trying to get the business through the wall.
It's not about the wall. It's not about the wall on the border of Mexico. It's about not building walls in our hearts. And it's like, what? Like, excuse me? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Everyone who it's like some people who are getting clapped back for voting for Trump because he's awful and he's and people don't like him now or even before, are trying to create this new narrative where well, can't we all just get along? Doesn't matter who we voted for. That's just politics. We all got to get along. We're all just members of society. It's like, nah, that's a red mark.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a lot. It's always a lot, but I'm probably gonna fall asleep because I gotta get up really early. Because apparently, I'm making Soros money, so I gotta get up and work hard for that money early in the morning. That's gonna be my other running joke for 2017 about this Soros money I'm apparently taking, which is why I'm trying to find a second job now to help out my parents. But that's a whole nother story. Yeah, so I appreciate everybody who rocked with us for an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half after this debate. Help Brandon and I come up with a name. I came up with bad and bougie. I don't know which one of us is bad or bougie, but maybe we're both. I don't know. But I love doing these late shows with Brandon.
Maybe not this late. I'm a bit tired.
Yeah, I am a bit tired too. But I appreciate everyone for joining us this evening. Sorry to cut it short, but I probably, instead of me falling asleep on air, I'd rather put a pin in it right here. Yes, again, I did fall asleep on air one night. I actually turned my camera off and laid back. But at least we had someone on the line to talk to Brandon. They were texting me and yelling at me Anoa, go to sleep. Look, seriously. That's why it's so funny when we get accused of things like dark money and all this other stuff. If we really did have all this extra money, do you think that I'd be working as hard as I do to take care of my family and other stuff and talk to you guys? No, I'd be sitting here doing this shit with you full time, all day, every day. Fuck my day job. But that's not the case. We all have to get up and work. We grind it out and we do what we got to do. So appreciate you guys lots. I don't need people to agree with me. I don't need people to like me. But you know what? You damn sure going to respect me. So this has been Anoa and Brandon. We got to talk about the Zodiac killer, healthcare debate, and more.
Maybe
hit us up on Twitter.
The Zodiac killer. Maybe he is the one responsible for the Bowling Green massacre. You're gonna talk about that?
We're gonna pick that up and talk about that another time. Check us out the rest of the week. I'll be on tomorrow night, Wednesday, 8 p.m. with Portia Bolger. We're gonna be talking about next steps in resistance, how to organize locally, and some other stuff. And then Brandon will be back on Thursday night at 8, also at 8 Eastern time, with the crew over at Project Sanity. So talking same time, same station.
About protesting and punching Nazis.
Protesting and punching Nazis. Ooh, sounds like fun. Anyway, all right. Good night, everybody. Peace.